Hi everyone, my name's Emily and I did my project on autism spectrum disorder and the development of people with autism. So autism is a biological, neurological, developmental disability that leads to emotional disturbances and behavior issues. ASD is usually noticeable before 36 months of age. Children with ASD commonly have issues with verbal and nonverbal communication, social interaction, having repetitive behaviors, and restricted interest. And sometimes they have reduced cognitive function or learning issues. And other times they have increased cognitive function and incredible ability to learn. The diagnosis of ASD is due to abnormal brain development in the frontal lobe, which controls executive functioning. The exact cause of autism is yet unknown, but currently research suggests that it's due to a mix of environmental elements along with genetic factors. The brain abnormalities caused by autism within the frontal lobe lead to common issues with communication and social interaction. The National Autism Association currently suggests that 1 in 68 children has autism, making autism the fastest growing developmental disorder in the world. ASD is more prevalent in males than females with a 1 to 4 ratio. Right now, there's no known cure for ASD, but ASD is considered to be highly treatable, and children with ASD are able to make progress throughout their lives. There's a great variance in the spectrum of autism from brilliance to severe cognitive dysfunction. No two people with autism are alike. This places autism onto a spectrum commonly known as autism spectrum disorder. Some signs of autism, which are usually noticeable before 36 months of age or 3 years, are avoiding eye contact, delay in developmental milestones such as walking and talking, delay in speech acquisition, isolation, restricted interest, and repetitive behaviors, becoming easily irritated or agitated or having anxiety, sensorily related actions such as rocking or flicking or flapping, avoiding physical contact with other people, not responding to their given names, struggling to build relationships, and difficulty understanding the emotions of others. Children sometimes have heightened or reduced use of their 5 senses. Sometimes they'll show no interest in objects by not pointing at them when they're very young, or showing extreme interest in very few objects. Sometimes they provide answers that just don't make sense, and sometimes they repeat phrases and words, especially someone's last words. For example, when you're asking an autistic child if they want milk or juice, they will often answer juice even if it's not the answer they wanted to give because it's the last words they heard. How is ASD diagnosed? Children should be screened for developmental delays by a medical professional up to 36 months or 3 years of age. If there's delays or concerns, they should be screened for genetic, neurological, vision, hearing abnormalities by a medical professional. So, if a child is diagnosed with ASD, there are several steps that can be taken. While there's no known cure for ASD at this time, ASD is treatable and children will be able to progress. There's a variety of treatment options that are recommended by the Center of Disease Control. Some include medical interventions, such as the use of medication to control symptoms like anxiety or anger and mood swings. Some people also use animal therapy or art or music therapy. Some people believe in dietary changes, such as the removal of gluten or dairy from the child's diet or carb counting. Therapies also include different types of behavior therapies. So according to the research I looked at, the most prominent therapy that produced progress was behavioral therapy. The first study I looked at was through Rutgers Autism Program that looked at young children who were severely autistic and that were receiving behavioral intervention. So at the time, there were 76 boys at the Center for Autism at Rutgers and 4 girls. So their study was related to the numbers within the program, and they took 19 boys and 1 girl into the study to equally represent the population. The average age of the child when the study was started was 41 and a half months old. The youngest child was 20 months old, and the youngest child was 20 months old, and the oldest child was 65 months old. All the children had been diagnosed severely autistic by at least 2 independent parties. They had scored between a 37.5 and a 58 on the autism rating scale, and between a 38 and a 53 on the Vine Adaptive Behavior Scale before treatment began. The study went on for 4 years while the child all received equal treatment. For the first 2 years, all 20 children were provided with a home-based ABA model for treatment. They were treated for 40 hours a week with a one-on-one family-chosen instructor who worked with the child for 6-hour days and 2 3-hour splits. They were provided instruction 7 days a week. And all 20 attended preschool the next 2 following years, which provided school-based treatments. They were also given 20 hours of in-home instruction with the same ABA model. They were worked every day after school for 3 hours, and then they had 2 3-hour sessions on the weekend or 1 6-hour session on the weekend. At the end of all 4 years, all 20 children were retested on the autism rating scale and the Vine Adaptive Behavior Scale. 9 children now tested in the non-autistic range. 2 became mild to moderately autistic, and 2 remained in the severely autistic range. Their IQ levels were also tested, and 10 of the students had significant increases in their IQ. Afterward, they were placed into education settings. 7 of the students were placed into full-time regular education settings with minimal assistance. 3 of the students were placed into special ed settings, and the rest of the students were placed into a regular ed setting with one-on-one help from an aide at times. The study compared their findings to a group of autistic children who had received none or less dramatic intervention and found that the intensive dramatic intervention with ABA model behavior therapy treatment created much greater gains. They found that many factors outside of intervention also played a huge role, such as age of intervention. With the younger the child, the more effect happening, the intake IQ, and along with their family history. Another study that was conducted by Pangiagini and Galato looked at the folk physics and the folk psychology of people with ASD, and then with people with no known developmental disabilities. Folk means the natural understanding of the world around us. So when we're talking about folk physics, we're talking about people's natural understanding of objects and how they work around us. And when we talk about folk psychology, we're talking about people's natural understanding of other people's emotions and behaviors that are derived by emotions. Within the study, they tested thousands of people from around the world from every ethnicity and age group, and they compared them to each other through internet-based gaming. People with autism had a greater score of folk physics than folk psychology, showing actually a fairly large deficit in folk psychology or the natural understanding of the people around them. But people without any developmental disabilities scored much lower on the folk physics section than the folk psychology section. So their understanding of their objects around them and how they work was much less than the understanding of the people around them and how their emotions work. The one greater difference was they found that gender didn't play a role in the study, but age did. They attributed to what they found is the people with autism that were younger had less understanding of folk psychology than people that were older. They attributed that difference to interventions such as behavior therapies throughout their lives and their natural lifetime experiences, leading to them having higher folk psychology scores than younger people. Another study found a similar thing. They looked at the restricted interest and repetitive behaviors with people with ASD that were considered to be high functioning. So these are people who have high IQs and can pretty much do things independently. They looked at 185 people, and 76 did not have any known disabilities, and 109 of them had high functioning autism. They gave each person an interest scale to measure their interest in different things, such as common hobbies such as sports, crafting, things like that. They found that people without autism had a wider range of interests, but less intense interests, and people with high functioning autism had very intense interest on fewer things. They were still interested in many things, but certain things they were extremely interested in. Once again, they found within their study that people with high functioning autism were older, had less intense interest and less restricted interest than younger people with high functioning autism. They once again attributed their findings to the use of lifetime experiences along with receiving therapy throughout their lives that could change the way they thought and naturally. So, in our 3 studies, we find a common theme that treatment improved the development and through implementation of intensive behavior therapy. The Rutgers Autism Program study showcased that early intervention can lead to reduced severity on the autism scale, and that it could lead to general education placement being more likely. The study by Piagiani and Galato showcased that people with ASD have a less of an understanding of the way people naturally interact with each other and how their emotions affect other people, but that can be changed through life experience and therapy. And then our last study showed that people with autism naturally have restrictive interest and repetitive behaviors and preoccupations and attachments to objects, which once again was related to frontal lobe development, but could be changed through cognitive behavior therapy to help develop their executive functioning within their frontal lobe. So when we're talking about the different kinds of therapy, there were several different options that were addressed throughout the studies as highly effective. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about each one so you can understand them. The first and most popular one was applied behavior analysis, which focuses on using positive reinforcement over time to increase desired behaviors and over time reduce unwanted behaviors. Another popular one was the TEACH method, which focuses on providing supports to engage intention, organization, and verbal and social communication. Another was verbal behavior, which focuses on the teaching of the use of verbal and nonverbal language by connecting words to their purpose instead of their meaning. SERTS was also very common within the studies, which focuses on fostering the ability to naturally socially interact and communicate, regulate your own emotions when it comes to everyday stress, and use transitional supports such as written schedules, picture prompts, and sensory objects to deal with daily life. And the last one that I saw in the studies commonly was relationship development intervention, which is used in a family-based model, so the whole family receives therapy, and it pushes the understanding of other people's emotions, proper social behaviors, using verbal and nonverbal language, and the ability to be flexible, reflect on past events to predict future outcomes. So that's the end of my presentation. I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation, and please let me know if you have any questions. My questions for discussion are, what are some of the characteristics that we commonly see within our classrooms with children who have ASD? How can we make the general public more aware of the symptoms and characteristics of ASD to improve understanding and awareness? How should we model, or how does behavior intervention begin for young people diagnosed with ASD? How does folk psychology and folk physics differ between people with ASD and normally developing people, and why do you think that's so? And lastly, what are some ways we can work to integrate ASD children into our general education settings? Thank you. I hope you have a great day.